some people hugging closer to scientific-ish evidence have quoted this man who had developed the PCR process for replicating genetic material, Mullins, and that they cite a video of him basically casting doubt on HIV as the cause of AIDS. And that's their basis for casting doubt on everything else that we've discovered around using PCR to test for viruses.
Right, and that's exactly the same example that we were talking about. Is give me the direct evidence, right? That was what he was looking for. He was going around, harassing Montagnier and Gallo to say, give me the evidence that this is really a virus. And they were saying, well, look at the monkey data. Oh, but where is the direct evidence? Well, look at this, they were giving them data that was consistent with a viral agent, right? And he was still not believing it because there was no identification. What he was looking for was for somebody to give him a virus, right? Not the blood, not anything from anyone, but a virus for him to put it into a person intentionally, for him to witness the multiplication of that virus in the organs in real time, and for the organs to be linked directly to the disease that he was looking for, which is not realistic.
It's not ethical. It's not medically
well,
ethical.
It's not ethical. It's kind of a whole level of crazy. But the most important thing is that human physiology does not work in this way. The human body is a complex coexistence of many systems, and there is no clear cause and effect and clear sequence of events that we can fully demonstrate in any disease. And it's simply because we don't have the tools to demonstrate them. We don't have the telescope lenses that allow us to see directly the planet that we are looking at on Alpha Centauri that rotates around that star. We can go through the indirect evidence, but that is not just true for viruses, it's true for almost any human disease.
Right. And so Mullins' training was as a chemist. And in chemistry, you can do more of those very direct, highly isolated, observable results.
Right.
But in biology, it's just not that straightforward.
It's not the same science. And, medical science is more similar to physics in a way, where a lot of what we know is hypotheses and theories that are proven by direct observation. When Newton hypothesized that there was gravity, right, he actually had nothing to measure it. Now we know for sure there is gravity because we have sent out balloons, in the upper atmosphere showing that gravity changes, the amount of weight of a certain object changes while the mass remains constant.
As it gets further from the surface of the Earth.
Right. You couldn't guess that with an apple falling from a tree.
Right.
Right? So
his math was probably not 100% accurate from what he was guessing with his limited tools back in the day. As today, we're like, well, we can update the math a little bit, tweak it.
Right. And it's the same with medicine. We knew, for instance, I've been working for most of my professional life in inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. So we've known that rheumatoid arthritis or lupus are due to organ inflammation. They've been treated for the last 60 years with steroids, which are medicines that are used to curb the inflammation. It's only over the last 20 to 30 years that we're actually starting to understand the molecular mechanisms of those diseases. Because now we have the technology, mostly thanks to Dr. Mullen, that gave us the PCR, which allow us to measure things that we couldn't measure before.
Right. So in that, there's been a theory going around that PCR has been used to do extra cycles that would produce anything you want to see if you just do enough cycles.
Yeah, that's not true, and that's from somebody that doesn't know or never seen a PCR. You don't get, so first of all, any scientific experiment of any kind is run against a false negative and a false positive, right? So you have a standard, then you have a negative sample, which could be, water, and then you have a positive sample, where you have, so in this case, you would have a standard, which is like a scale that shows all the different numbers, right? Or the different potential size of a molecule. Then you have a false negative, then you have a negative control, which is nothing, so that would appear blank. And then you have your a positive, which is something that is always going to become positive in the same way. And then you have the samples that you test, right? So it doesn't matter if you do 20 cycles, 30 cycles, or 50 cycles. You're not going to change the way the standard, the positive control, and the negative control are gonna look. What you add is background noise. So it might be more difficult to see a positive, but it's not like you're gonna generate a positive when there isn't one.
So if you take someone who does not have COVID,
right,
and you just run more and more PCR cycles, you're not going to suddenly see COVID.
You probably are not. You're going to see a lot of, crap coming up, but you're probably not going to see anything that gives you, this is it, right? Yeah. Other than a faint idea that could be it. But this is not how the test is set up. So let's say you want, and again, I was lucky enough to actually have been doing this in a lab for many years, where we were looking at specific genetic sequences, and those genetic sequences were new. So we had to build our own primers. So the primers are those two pieces that you attach to your genetic sequence that will recognize that one that you're looking for, right? And they're very specific. And they're basically like the anchoring bits where the DNA is going to be replicated. So you run cycles, right, to see whether your primers are working. You will run, 20 cycles, 25 cycles, 30 cycles, 35, 40 cycles. You will not go above 40 normally. If you don't get anything at 40 cycles, you're probably not going to get anything anyway. And then you standardize and say, okay, look, I can get a clear signal at 30 cycles or 35 cycles. So I'm going to use 30 cycles or 35 cycles as my protocol moving forward. You're not going to change that randomly because one sample all of a sudden comes out negative and you expect it to be positive. You're not going to run more cycles on that specific sample just because you don't like the result. It's not how it works, right? It's not, if you have a blood test and they count your blood count and they come to, your blood count comes at 3 million and they want to see 4 millions. They just don't keep counting, right? It's not like the votes in Georgia or the votes at the elections that if you keep counting, you might find more, right? And even in the elections, that didn't work because, it's not by stopping counting or by continuing counting something that is that you find different results.
Even if you had very corrupt scientists who wanted to create more positive tests, increasing the PCR cycles would not produce those results anyway.
Would likely not produce the results. And you would know, because when you look at the result, you would know that there is a lot of background noise. And a reliable PCR test would have very little background noise.
Got it.
That's what you do by optimizing the cycles in the protocol, right? You are trying to get the best signal with the less amount of background noise that you can.